Aaron, if you can watch for anyone else that joins and just bring them in as they come, we can go ahead and get started.
All right, sounds good. I will do that. Thank you everyone for coming out and joining us this afternoon. This is a great event to be able to put on. Just to let everybody know, this meeting is being recorded. And thank you to our panel for taking time out of your busy day to answer some of the questions about the concerns that we've been having with Bountiful Water. So on our panel, we have Chris Lloyd, Les Merrill, Greg Reyneke, and Jerry Wilson. I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to Les for just a minute so that he can introduce everyone, and then everyone can go ahead and take a minute to tell 2 or 3 things about themselves.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Aaron. Reyneke Labs was started a few years ago in Bountiful, Utah, and our goal was to design equipment to test water very quickly and accurately right at the source. So that is the biggest difference that you're hearing about Reyneke Labs now for the first time. Our equipment is patented in a number of countries now, and we're seeking certification for this device, but it's going to be one that requires a new approach and new certification across the board. So if what we try to do is meet all of the NELAC standards for our tests that we run. So I've been in the water industry for about 40 years as an international project manager for a number of companies, and have worked on very large systems throughout the world. I'll introduce Christopher Lloyd, who's our Ph.D. on staff. And Chris, if you could introduce yourself a little bit about your background.
Well, I can go off mute and do that, hopefully. Yeah, my PhD is in chemistry. I have worked for about 25 to 30 years developing diagnostic assays for healthcare, for military applications, and most recently it was for water testing, and it was both environmental and industrial. So the patented technology is based on about 30 years of spectroscopy experience and trying to develop field tests. But I spent, out of those 30 years, probably more than 20 years working as a microbiologist. So I'd hope to leave that, but in water testing, it turns out that's just not possible, as microbiology is integral to that. But hopefully that's a good enough introduction.
Perfect, Chris, thank you. And Greg, if I could have you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Les. Greg Reyneke. I grew up in South Africa, and I've had the privilege of calling the United States of America home for about the last 30 years now. I'm on the water treatment side of the fence, and what my team does is we create solutions for complicated water problems. We deal with water issues all over the world. And so anytime a water issue crops up in our home state, we pay close attention, and we want to make sure that people get good information and the most accurate information they can to make smart decisions on protecting their health and welfare.
Thanks, Greg, and it's a pleasure working with you, with the Water Quality Association and our other events. We've got Jerry Wilson from Bountiful City has also joined us. Jerry, if you could introduce yourself for a minute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Can hear you perfectly.
Okay, good. So I'm Jerry Wilson. I've worked for Bountiful City for about 15 years. I'm the assistant director for the water department. And I am in charge of, running the treatment plant and also multiple other sites. We have wells and booster stations, and I kind of oversee their operations and maintenance. So I don't have nearly the extensive experience as you guys here. That's why we come to you for when we have questions.
Well, and thank you. It's been great to work with Bountiful City. I started working with Bountiful City a few years ago with one of my old high school buddies, Mark Slorgowski, who was the former director of the water department. And as we were developing our equipment, I needed some place to do a real world test side by side. And Mark was willing to have us do that. So they ran, any test that Bountiful City does, they actually have to, by law, have a certified lab run the test, and that is what Bountiful City does. What we do at Reyneke with this new equipment that I mentioned in the introduction is we get the same level of performance, but we do it with this instrument that we have designed and developed here in Bountiful that is now patented. We've had a number of people join us. That's why I just reiterated that. But I wanted to, now that the introductions are finished, and any questions that anybody has on our background, please feel free to ask at any time, raise your hand, and we'll get with you. There was a number of questions that were posed through Facebook. So I would like to ask Aaron if you could go through some of those questions and see if we can answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. Just letting everybody know about the format. This is an open panel, so the questions will go to the entire panel. If there is a question that you would like directed to a certain person, then please down in the chat, mention that person's name. Also, if you have an additional question that has not been covered, please definitely put it in the chat. And if you feel like you need to unmute to clarify your question, then please go ahead and do so. First of all, we're going to go over the questions that we received on the Facebook event page. And as soon as we're finished going over those, hopefully that answers a lot of the questions. But if not, then we'll go ahead and open it up to the questions that are in the chat. So first of all, the first question is how long, no, you know what? We're going to switch up the order. Sorry. Why is the water green in Bountiful?
So you decided to start with the $1 million question. Okay. I'm going to share a screen right now that shows the actual water quality data that we took yesterday in the Mueller Park plant. So let me see if I can get the right screen up. Okay, you should be seeing the screen now with a lot of numbers on it. What I'm going to tell you about the water that we're seeing in Bountiful that's green is that this water from this plant is some of the best water in the state. And that's might seem a little interesting and weird, but this water is clean and naturally soft. It's very, very low in calcium and magnesium. It's very balanced. And so what I can tell you is what there's not iron or lead or copper in this water. We've tested for a number of other things now. Dr. Lloyd has been examining this for any kind of algae or Chris, I'm going to let you pronounce everything if you would go ahead.
No, actually, we've looked at this water for phytoplankton and for algae using US EPA method 445, and it's below the detection limit. So we know that it's not intact phytoplankton or blue-green algae or anything like that. That's kind of what we expect to see in the water here in the spring. But the stuff that's being distributed out of Bountiful does not have that in there. So I suspect that the reason it's a green color is because of chlorophyll would be my initial guess, but it's below our detection limit, just using the method without doing a chlorophyll extraction. So using the EPA methods, we know it's not algae. Does that help?
Very helpful, Chris. Thank you very much. Greg, you've only seen a couple of photos of this water, and you know a lot about the different things that we're facing this time of year. I'd love to hear your opinion.
Well, it's not uncommon on water supplies like this when we come out of our winter hibernation to see some organic material in the raw feed water going into the city plant. And that organic material does not make the water unsafe, but it does contribute aesthetically to some color. And sometimes for some people, they might pick up a little bit of taste. They might notice something almost organic, kind of an earthy taste. And this has been researched in great detail by the American Waterworks Association and by folks like us on the treatment side. And most of this aesthetic issue is typically completely benign. Benign, of course, meaning that it doesn't hurt anyone or do any harm to buildings or plants. And it's one of those things that shows up for a little bit and then it disappears. Now, obviously, some people don't like it and they want to get rid of it. And there's a lot of good household treatment equipment that can do that, or drinking water filters that can do that. But the water, for sure, and this is the important takeaway here, is that this water meets and exceeds all federal minimum standards.
Thank you, Greg. Jerry, would you like to opine on this discussion?
Yeah, so through all the testing that we've done, we're seeing all of the same stuff that you guys are seeing. This is like a couple years ago when this happened, all of the tests showed pretty much the same thing, that it was it wasn't a harmful substance that was causing the water to turn green. I did find out that the plant has we're able to use ACH, which is a polymer that was specifically designed into the plant to help with color. And so I started that system up yesterday, and we're seeing encouraging results. The green color in the clear well and in the effluent, whenever I take water directly out of the filters, has diminished significantly. So yeah, we're having good luck with that. And then we're adding some sodium hydroxide as well to balance the pH. So the ACH has an alkalinity of 83%. Just, you guys know better what that means than I do, but that's what it has. And so
that ACH is a really good treatment choice. I think you're making a smart decision there. Aluminum chlorohydrate, it provides a very safe way of coagulating, dropping out charged organics and inorganics. So that's a very good decision.
So yeah, we had it up there already, and we were told by the former operator of the plant that we didn't need it because our turbidity was so low. It just wasn't necessary, but as it turns out, it helps with the color. So we'll probably be using it seasonally. When we know that green water season is coming, we'll probably fire it up, and then once we're past that, then we'll discontinue it for the remainder of the year.
So that kind of brings us into the next question that we were going to ask anyway, is how long do you suspect that the water will be green?
Well, I can tell you right now that the green color has significantly reduced. So at this point, we just need to see the turnover in the system. So once the treated water now has time to replace the water that's in the system, might take a couple days to, a week and a half for the whole system to see a reduction in color.
Okay, excellent. I know that some of these questions are going to repeat a little bit about what was already asked, but I think it's important to get all of the points from all of these questions. I'm going to continue on. Sam asks, what's in it. The taste has changed in my filtration system over the last couple of weeks. Last year, our well ran out and it was not reported for several months. Is this similar to that issue?
I don't know which well ran out that he was talking about, but it could be because right now I'm dropping water. So we typically don't have enough water during the summer to drop water from the higher elevations in Bountiful to the lower elevations, but right now we do. And so because we're dropping water into reservoirs that are typically filled with Calder well specifically, people are on the kind of the south, middle and south end of town. They're going to notice a difference because the well water has turned off and you're getting treatment plant water. So that probably can account for some of the taste and, you know, just the change in characteristics. But once summer warms up and the demand for the water is high enough that we don't have enough to drop down, then, you know, the wells will run more and you'll start seeing the water like you normally see it. But one of the other benefits, so right now with the drought season that we're in, we're really trying to rest our wells because and this is something that I personally am really concerned about over at First East Well. Our drawdown from 2003, which are the earliest records that I can find, our aquifer level has gone down 30 feet in static level. And so at the end of summer last year, First East Well, the dynamic well level, which is the water level when the well is running, was down to the intake of the pump. So our aquifer is significantly overdrawn for the way that our system is designed. So anyway, we're trying to rest our wells. That's a long way to get around to saying we're resting our wells, and so dropping the water is going to help a ton with that.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. Go ahead, Erin.
Okay, so this comes from somebody on the Facebook page who has water experience. So it's a little bit more of a detailed question. I feel like you've answered a bit of it, but there's still a little bit in there. So the UF membrane treatment does not remove organics, which is most likely why they are having the color issue. Is Bountiful City prepared to add an additional treatment, most likely GAC, to their process? I've read plenty about how the water is not harmful for consumers, but have seen nothing about a solution to this problem. It is not acceptable for the city to expect consumers to drink green drinking water. Bountiful City's problem is not green drinking water. It is and will be consumer confidence. Maybe it's time we slow down on building new parks and walking trails and make the basics of public health a priority. Safe or not, I will not drink green water. So I will ask Jerry what his thoughts on that are first, possibly, and then open up to the rest of the panel.
Well, I don't know what the chemical he is suggesting is, but ACH is what we're using to take the color out of it right now. And that's what the Division of Drinking Water and the engineers who designed the plant designed and approved for use at our treatment plant. So that's what we're doing, and that's what we're continuing to do. And we're seeing encouraging results with the color of the water.
Greg, do you have a comment?
Yeah, you know, one of the first world problems we have is that we're accustomed to this limitless supply of water that comes out of our faucets 24/7. And a lot of the projects that I work on around the world, they don't have those luxuries. So here in America, we're kind of spoiled. We love crystal clear water all the time. When we look at what the city produces millions of gallons of treated water. But of those gallons of treated water, statistics tells us that less than 1% of the water that the city produces is actually consumed by humans. So it's difficult to expect the city to spend the money to invest in the infrastructure, because at the end of the day, that means everyone pays more taxes. But it's difficult to invest in the infrastructure to treat these very difficult issues to treat. And so this is why the American Water Works Association, the US EPA, a lot of these organizations have looked at these kinds of contaminants, and they say, yes, this is an aesthetic issue, but there's no science to tell us that it's a health risk. So the person asking the question mentioned a couple of technologies. One is UF, that's ultrafiltration, which is outstanding at removing organic material of a large size, typically above 0.1 micron, but it doesn't do well with things that are tannic or humic or fulvic based, like this particular contaminant. So these are more difficult to remove. Even granular activated carbon, as the questioner alluded to, is not always the very best choice for decolorization for these particular contaminants. So granular activated carbon is used at the municipal level, but it adds to the operating cost of the plant. And then, of course, it has further complexities where it can promote the growth of certain bacteria like nitrobacters and things like that. So it's very difficult to deploy that kind of thing at the city level. It's a lot easier to manage it at the point of entry, at the house, or the point of use at the faucet. And so someone can very cost effectively filter their water with a pitcher filter, an under-counter filter, or even certain whole house technologies that are very affordable. So it's difficult for us to put that burden on the city, and I sure understand the frustration of the person asking the question, but it will add astronomically to the cost of treating the water.
Hey, can I say something else? Kind of in addition to what you're saying. So the granule activated carbon, that's what our old treatment plant had in the sediment filters that we used. And so when we during the pilot, when we were trying to decide what filters to use, and we ultimately decided on the ultrafiltration, the Torre
UF membranes.
Yeah, UF membranes. So anyway, they tested ACH with the water in that pilot specifically as a replacement for the activated carbon. So that's why that particular chemical was chosen, and that's, you know, we've started using it, so, and we're having good results with it.
And that's a really good choice, Jerry. You know, something perhaps for those that don't know much about ACH. ACH is a coagulant. It helps encourage things to stick together and make the little pieces bigger, which makes them easier to filter out of the water. So ultrafiltration as a final barrier technology is phenomenal stuff. It's what we use to protect people from deadly bacteria. And so using ACH to help bind some of the charged particles together to make them stick, and then catching them and getting rid of them with the ultrafiltration, it's a really smart choice, and it's one of the more environmentally sustainable choices. So good job on picking that particular combo.
I saw a pop-up question saying, did we know that the water was going to be green this year? And we knew that the water a couple years ago did this, but last year it didn't. And so we didn't really, and this treatment plant is only a couple years old, so we weren't sure this year if it was going to be a problem or not. And, you know, as it turns out, it is, and we're figuring out how to handle it. So to answer your question, we weren't sure. Otherwise, so now that we know about this problem, it looks like it's going to be a seasonal problem. We anticipate that in the springtime, when flows start coming up and temperatures start warming, that we'll start using the ACH ahead of time so that we don't see this happen again.
Thanks, Jerry, and I hope that answered the question. It's And the gentleman that asked this question, I don't know if you've been on for the whole time, but we have been following this for a number of years, and it's interesting that more of the people, more of the residents of Bountiful are seeing this, as Jerry alluded to earlier, because the stress on the aquifers and the other wells that are supplied, or that supply Bountiful, well, 60% of Bountiful's supply comes from 9 different wells around the city. And those aquifers are stressed, and right now there's an opportunity to utilize this great water coming from Mueller Park to offset that and allow the aquifers to rebuild. And Jerry, you might want to mention a little bit about what we've seen in the local aquifers as far as just in the few weeks that you've been using the Mueller Park plant.
So First East well, what I've been seeing there, and so that pump and motor went down in November, and we had to have it replaced. And we got it up and running again, and over the months that it was off, that aquifer, the static level of the aquifer was coming up about a foot every 3 weeks. So that's encouraging. And then I don't know what else you're asking about specifically.
No, that's good. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay.
It's just that it relieves the stress, and it's allowing
Yeah.
the aquifers to replenish. Now, one of the things that we've seen in Bountiful water, and I'm going to put the shared screen back up again for just a few minutes because I know some people didn't see it earlier. The screen I'm showing now is the actual laboratory data from the Mueller Park lab or Mueller Park treatment facility yesterday. And you'll see the magnesium numbers and the calcium numbers. In most of the 9 wells throughout Bountiful, it's significantly different. We have seen magnesium levels as high as 200 parts per million. Calcium numbers as high as 400 parts per million. That's the very hard water that most people are familiar with Bountiful. The issue with this clean water, super clean water coming from this plant now, it has different effects in our home. So if your home is set up to handle a very hard water and now you're seeing a very clean water, there can be some dynamics that happen inside of your home that are not the city is not able to take care of those. So it's an issue that I'd like to bring up, but Aaron, I'm getting ahead of the questions that were on this panel to ask. So what is the next question?
That question's coming, don't worry.
Okay.
But probably one of the next follow-up questions that we need to ask is from Jennifer. She says, how do we know that we are being told truthful information? How can we verify this?
Well, we're doing all of our tests from, in addition to Reyneke helping us out with the quick tests, we have a whole bunch of tests that Chemtech Ford Laboratories is running, and we have no incentive to, mislead anybody. And one of the things, so Mark Slagowski that Les was talking about, one of the things that he told me when I got this position was, if you have any issues, the first thing you do is call the Division of Drinking Water and get their feedback on what you should do. And that is exactly what I have done every time we have run into any kind of problem. Is we always work with the Division of Drinking Water under their direction, and with the Davis County Health Department. And we do all of the tests through the certified labs, and We publish the, consumer confidence report every year that outlines what we find. So I guess you're just going to have to trust us that it's also, a major crime to lie about this kind of stuff. And I mean, everybody knows what happened in Flint, Michigan, and we don't want to mislead anybody because we don't want that kind of situation here. So.
May I chime in on that a little bit, Jerry? And partially answering a note that I see in the chats right now as well. And the chat says, I don't see any organics on these tests or things like lead, radium, etc. Can you speak to how those things are tested? And obviously the green tint raises concerns that there's harmful organics in the water. I think we've already addressed the organics issue, that it's not algae and it's not the phytoplankton as Dr. Lloyd had mentioned earlier. But and those results are not shown on the part that's on the screen right now. But lead has been tested, copper has been tested, and there is no trace of those in this feed water. The other part that's mentioned in the chat is radium, and we had a recent event in Bountiful where radium was detected. This is a complex issue, and the communication became a very.
But I don't know how to fix it.
Just a second. So it becomes a very complex situation when you're testing for a compound that takes up to 3 months for the standard testing methods to run their course. And that was one of the reasons why we started Reyneke Labs, was to develop tests that we could see right on site while we're there what the results would be from the lab that, it might take 2 to 3 weeks to get the results from. We are working with Bountiful City on a test for radium that is going to be very unique, and that in 20 minutes, we should be able to have an answer for these low level of radium contaminations in the water. I'm proud to say that the City of Bountiful has handled that issue with the drinking water, the state drinking water department very well, ahead of time, ahead of budget, or under budget, should say, and it's working to plan. So there is no danger from the radium. And if there were, Greg, if there were radium in your water, there's standard ways to take that out inside of your house.
Oh yeah, for sure. And just to extend on what you and Jerry have said, the new normal is to always trust but verify. And Bountiful City has an excellent track record as far as providing great water. And when they've run into issues, they've notified as quickly as they possibly could. But it's also okay to test your own water if you want. A lot of consumers want their own additional confidence, and they want to make sure, because there's a difference between the water at the city plant and the water in your own individual home. In fact, a lot of our experience has shown that water in neighborhoods can sometimes vary from house to house just based on the plumbing and things like that. And so it's totally okay to test your own water. Like anything in life, if you have additional concerns, do additional tests and see what you see. And the Bountiful City water still meets all those minimum standards: lead, copper, radium. The minimum standards are set up to provide the best balance between safety and economic efficiency. Again, the city can only do so much with the dollars that they're given through taxes, and none of us want to pay more taxes. And then for the people that want to take their water beyond the minimum, then they can take it above for their point of use or for their point of drinking, and they can do additional treatment and filtration. And for any and all waterborne contaminants, there are many affordable technologies to treat them.
This actually leads right into a question from Joni on the Facebook feed, and it says, there seems to be many home filtering options at Lowe's and Home Depot, and I'm going to add testing options in there as well as a side note. but what would be best to help filter out chlorine, fluoride, and other chemicals out of our house water? I'm also going to add copper and lead in there as well, because as we know that green water can be a sign of other harmful contaminants.
So there are a lot of technologies that are available and a lot of different people selling them. The big thing to look for when you're buying a drinking filter is to see that it's third-party tested and verified. So there's a number of really good test standards that are administered by the Water Quality Association, the NSF or IAPMO. And you want to look for some standards like NSF 53, for example. And look and see every device that's sold, these certified point of use devices, they'll have a performance data sheet, which is a third-party validation of how well the device does against different contaminants. And it'll give the end user, the homeowner, the peace of mind to know that this thing will actually get the job done. So for technologies, some concepts to look for are things like reverse osmosis, activated carbon block filtration, things like that. They'll do really, really well against most waterborne contaminants that, even though they're below federal minimums, people might want to get rid of them. But again, go for certified products that have been third-party verified, WQA, NSF, IAPMO.
Let me interject on what Greg said, and that is guidance from somebody that's been in the industry for a few years and recently served as president of the Water Quality Association Pacific region. So thanks, Greg, for that input. The other problem is you can go to a place like Home Depot or Lowe's or any number of other places and buy a filter, and it might have the NSF signature on this filter that it has passed some regulation for NSF, and put it in your home. And we've actually seen this in numerous cases in Bountiful, where this filter, although the NSF signature on it means that there's nothing in the housing of that filter that's going to cause any problems. But what's inside of it and how that reacts to your water can have very big consequences. And what I'm talking about here are citrus-based conditioners that are sold as softeners. In these cases, we have seen copper in Bountiful at 8 parts per million, which is 600% over the 1.3 parts per million of copper that's in the secondary health standards. So if this is in an older home that has copper piping that was soldered with something before I believe it was 96 or 1986, when the lead solder was regulated, you could actually end up with lead and copper in your water at hazardous levels, even though there's nothing present in the city water supply. So that's one of the main reasons why the lead copper rule in this last December was modified to have the communities start to put together more of an outreach. And this Zoom meeting that we're on right now was originally conceptualized almost 6 weeks ago as we were discussing getting the word out on the lead copper rule and trying to let people understand what's happening in your homes. So I could talk for hours and hours and hours, but Aaron, what are the other questions that we've got?
You are jumping the gun, but you're actually jumping it right into what we were going to ask next anyway. In the chat, Joe has asked a couple of questions. I think one of these really leads into what you were just saying. He says, was the utility aware that the water would be green this spring, which we've already addressed? If so, why were the residents not told? Many of us were concerned. Okay, this is the part that you're pretty much leading into right now. Many of us were concerned about the pipes in our homes, water heaters, etc. Not informing the citizens was a gross oversight. So I will add a follow-up question to this as kind of a clarification. Joe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but where does the responsibility between homeowners in their homes and the city, where is that separation?
Well, I would like to start with that, and then I want Greg's response. The responsibility of a homeowner begins on the homeowner's side of the water meter. The city is responsible to deliver great water to your water meter. Anything from that meter into your home is your responsibility. So, Greg, you speak much better than I do to this subject. So what would your...
Well, to extend on what you said, the city has a responsibility under law to provide a minimum amount of water at a minimum pressure, at a minimum quality to sustain human life, which again, Bountiful City does extremely well. After that, us as homeowners and business owners, we can then decide if we're okay with that or if we want to do something different to it. You know, different people want different things out of their water. Some people want to add things to their water, various minerals and things like that. Other people want to take things out. You know, it's kind of like a water softener. The city doesn't want to provide soft water to everybody because that would just be silly, but a lot of homeowners want their own water softener, and so that's on them. So the city makes sure that the water comes out meeting federal standards, which it does. Sometimes water that meets federal standard has color, like we do right now in Bountiful. Then it's up to us at the homeowner level to say, am I okay with this, or do I want to deal with it at my house? For the city to deal with it 100% means a lot of cost that's going to be wasted. You know, watering the lawn, I don't care if the water going on my plants is slightly green. And so when we again go back to that number of 1 in 100, if 1 gallon out of every 100 gallons that the city delivers to your home is consumed by you, it doesn't make a lot of sense to treat the entire city supply to super mega ultra drinking water quality. What makes sense is to treat the entire city supply to first world minimum standards, and then allow and empower the homeowner or the building owner to take it from there for themselves, making a decision based on what they believe is good for them and their family.
Thank you. Jerry, is there anything you'd like to add?
So if we had known for sure when this was going to happen, yes, we would have done some public outreach, but it kind of sprung up on us and we didn't know whether it was going to happen or not, because like I said, it didn't happen last year, but it did a couple years ago. So, you know, we don't have a consistent track record of when it's going to happen and how bad it's going to be. But going forward, we are going to have a plan in place to, like I've said before, start using the ACH early so that we don't have the green color come up. And also we are intending to send out a reminder in the spring, letting everybody know that it, you know, it could happen. The water could turn green, but we're doing what we can to manage it, and we're watching it.
Well, thank you. We are about 15 minutes left with our time allotment. At Reyneke Labs, we really want to get the information, good information backed on scientific data from multiple sources and with the industry best. And that's what we're searching for. We're open anytime to answer your questions. We'd be willing to do this Zoom meeting again, quarterly, or, you know, however you feel is good. There's a lot of things that we want to discuss with what's happening in your homes, but I'd like to, and Aaron, how many more questions do we have from the group?
There was two more, but they can be combined into one really. And it is, why are there black specks in my water? Are they dangerous? And why is there white residue left on my appliances from my water?
Okay, I'm going to do those really quickly. The black spots and the residue, I believe I saw that post on Facebook, and a lot of people said it's your activated carbon coming apart in your Brita filter. But as you read the initial complaint, this water was what they were filling the Brita filter with. So there's, it's really not coming from the Brita filter, it's coming from before. You can have things in your home, in your piping, that is corroding, that ends up showing up as black spots in that. So I don't know the case of the home. I don't know the age of the piping. I don't know their treatment methods that they've had installed. All of those things play into this. How old is the home? Is there contamination inside of the pipes? We've seen bacteria levels in homes, and I'm talking fairly new homes and fairly expensive homes. One of them was probably about a $30 million home in Park City, where the bacteria loading inside of the building was unbelievably high. It was crazy high. It took us 2 days to clean it out, to straighten up the pipe inside of the home. So efforts inside of your own home, we need to look at very carefully. So all of those issues, the white spots are, and I did hear a little bit more about that. So I've got something right here is a dog and pony show. One of the ways that you find the solids inside of the water is you do what they call a dry down test. It's the true measurement of total dissolved solids in water. So we use a little plastic or a little aluminum tray like this one that we dry it down. And if you look at that, there's barely anything inside of this one. This is the water, the green water from the Mueller Park plant yesterday. So it dried down to very, very little solids inside of there. So 105 parts per million to be exact. And that's total dissolved solids. This one shows two things going on in it. You'll see there's more of a white powdery substance inside of there, but also those black spots. Those black spots, because of the nature of this aluminum, it is not protected, show the corrosion capability of that water. So the water can become very corrosive if it's not treated properly. And in the water softening business, we like to say water softeners do not cause corrosion, but there's a couple of very important words that follow that, and that is as long as they are configured properly. Water softeners can be, on certain waters, become highly corrosive. And I'm going to go back to the share screen again. My computer is not cooperating well today. This is back to the data that we saw from the Mueller Park well yesterday. And as I go down, you'll see that we calculated these corrosion indexes. And this means a lot to water geeks like me, but we're seeing some of these, like the Picorius index and the Reisner stability index and aggressiveness index, speak to how corrosive that water can be. And where I've got these yellow marks, it shows that the natural water from this site is approaching a corrosive state. So it's very clean water. And what I'm going to show you in that line that I have black is if you put a standard water softener in here that is not configured properly on this particular water, these numbers, anything above 9 on the Picorius and the Reisner, is intolerably corrosive, and these are approaching 10 and 11. The aggressive index is anything below 10 is very aggressive. So you end up with something that's intolerably corrosive and very aggressive. So if inside of your home, you get this wonderful water from Bountiful, and your systems in your home aren't set up properly and configured properly, it can really corrode things fast, and that affects your taste. It affects these black spots that you're seeing. It affects the rust that you're seeing. It has compounding effects. So we have to work together to get the best water. And as Greg mentioned earlier, you have water systems that deliver you good, safe, at a particular level water, but it isn't the best that you can have. And it makes a difference for your plants. It's one type of water. That's why we look at the sodium absorption ratio. So this soft water at 3.9 is not optimum for your plants. At the 0.1 from the city, it's perfect. Anyway, lots of things to talk about on water. And Greg, have I missed anything that we should be discussing?
No, you've covered it well, and I think it's just important to remind everybody listening and watching that the water is safe. Yes, it can be made better, and yes, there's lots of good ways to make it better, but as with anything in life, let's listen and make good, smart decisions based on science, not emotion. And if we let the science drive our decision-making process, and we trust scientific methods to test and to evaluate and to treat, then we all end up with better quality water and happier, healthier homes and happier, healthier family.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
This has been, oh, sorry, Les.
No, go ahead, Erin.
This has been really great and extremely informative. Just in case there are any follow-up questions from the people on today or from anybody who views the recording later, where can people reach out? Where can they send their questions? Who should they call?
Ghostbusters. No, my phone number's out there on the web page and also on Facebook. Might as well give it here. They can call me directly on my cell phone, 801-209-5460. Reach out to info@retigolabs.com. Try to have a good presence locally on Facebook. We get shot down by all the administrators when we try to respond to the group messages. That's okay. We're not doing it as a sales pitch. We really are trying to teach everybody what's going on. I have spent a few years working with water systems all over the world, and the question's always, what's the water quality right now? And that's what we're trying to help answer. And Greg, with his experience, has helped us find that match between good quality data and great performance on your water.
Can I add something too?
Sure, go ahead.
So I want to thank everybody for coming and helping to answer these questions. I've learned a lot from the answers that you guys have given, so thank you. But also to the residents who have had the green water, if I were you guys, I would have been concerned too if I saw the coloration, and I would have wanted to know what was going on. So I don't blame anybody one bit for being concerned or wanting to know what was going on. And going forward, since we know that this is going to potentially be an annual event, we're going to try and put plans in place to do better with the reach out and informing everybody, to watch out for this kind of thing. And then also, green water can be a concern if it's in your home, because we know that copper kind of turns green, and the lead and copper rule is a big deal right now. And it's something that we're going to be heavily involved in investigating and finding out where lead and copper are and getting it out of the system and that sort of thing. So we appreciate everybody's concern. And if any resident or customer, feel free to call the department anytime. We're here and we're happy to answer questions and address issues as they come up. And a lot of times we don't know about some of the issues that might come up, like if there's a water leak. Sometimes the water in the area can look a little brown afterwards or red, just because those old cast iron pipes, when the water speeds up, it in those pipes, it can break some of that stuff loose. So, but there are things we can do about that. We can come flush a fire hydrant to flush the system in your area and clean up your, the water in your area. So don't hesitate to call. We're here to help and happy to help.
Jerry, can you put your water department phone number in the chat so that everybody has that really handy?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I can do that.
All
Thanks,
right.
Jerry.
Does
And
anybody have any last follow-up remarks?
just one
Les
more.
does.
One more from the old man here. I just shared another screen. And this screenshot is an electron microscope shot of what was inside of some, and I just got a note that I don't see it. But hopefully, did it come through? Can you guys see the screenshot that I shared?
No.
Okay, share screen. I'm going to try it again. There we go. And share. Okay. This photograph is an electron microscope photograph of the inside of a copper pipe from Bountiful, Utah. And some of the things that you can see inside of the pipe when you really look, and you just don't want to have these things fitting around. And this is due to a misapplied technology in a home with copper piping. And in this case, the home was built prior to 1965. It was soldered with lead-based solder. And while we're on this, I will show you the outside of that pipe and what it looked like. But that corrosion that we're seeing is mechanical, chemical, and biological corrosion events inside of your home. So we will love to have follow-up conversations. We want to help you learn more about the lead copper rule and taste of water. And please share this with anybody that you can. And to the panel, is there anything you'd like to close with? Greg?
Drink more water. It's good for you. Make sure the water you do drink is the best quality you can get your hands on. And let's all stay healthy in these trying times.
Okay, Dr. Lloyd?
No, just wrap it up.
He just told me, no, just wrap it up. It's okay. But having a Ph.D. like Chris Lloyd at our disposal, it's an honor to work with these fine people. And Jerry, thank you for your participation from Bountiful City. Jerry is the Assistant Director of the Bountiful City Water Department. This has been recorded. We are going to try to make this available to anybody to listen to, but if you would please share on the different formats and Facebook that there is a resource. We aren't just out here to sell everything, although I do love to sell things and I do need something to feed the family with, but there's so much information that we have that we need to share that I want you to be aware of. So thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Take care.